Joining me now, Wisconsin Congressman and member of the House Financial Services Committee, Bryan Steil. Congressman, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Congress heading back next week. One of the first orders of business is to avoid a partial government shutdown, which would happen at the end of the month if you guys don't fund the government. Do you expect that you're going to get together with Democrats and get this done, or is this going to be one of those things where, it's mostly going to be Republicans?
Well, it's mostly going to be Republicans carrying the weight, but we will have to get a handful of votes in the United States Senate to make sure that we keep the United States government open and operational. What we want to do is make sure that we don't allow spending to run roughshod to get those Democratic votes. The goal here is to deliver on the president's promise and our commitment to rein in spending. It was the Biden administration's massive spending that unleashed inflation on the American people. We have the task of bringing that spending back into check to bring inflation down to allow Americans to get back up and on their feet after the 4 disastrous years of the Biden administration.
Yeah, just ahead of the congressional return to Washington, the White House announced it was going to claw back about $5 billion in spending. The issue there, though, is Democrats say, hey, you guys are going around the whole process. This is from Hakeem Jeffries, top Democrat in the House. He says Republicans are once again abandoning the bipartisan appropriations process to pursue an extreme agenda that undermines America's national security. If there's a government shutdown, it will directly result from an out-of-control administration and compliant House Republicans who have spent the year focused on raising costs and ripping health care away from everyday Americans instead of making life better. Do you think that move from the White House, first, is legitimate and legal? And secondly, does it poison the water for trying to get enough Democrats to pass a funding bill to avoid a government shutdown?
We should be working across the board to get spending under control in Washington. There's plenty of spending that we should be working to claw back. Previously, we voted on a recisions package to do just that. Obviously, there were a handful of folks in the Senate that squealed about that, but we need to be doubling down on ultimately bringing the total amount of money that's being spent in Washington down. It also shouldn't be lost on people the hypocrisy of the left. As we recall, President Joe Biden attempted to take student loan debt and disperse that to all taxpayers in the United States of America, and the Supreme Court found that unconstitutional not once, but twice. I didn't hear a peep from many of my colleagues on the left about the unconstitutional actions of President Biden to spend more money. They're only frustrated when Republicans are working to spend less money in Washington, and that's exactly what we're going to need to do to get spending under control, to reduce inflation, and to help this economy fully get back on its feet.
And another one of the court fights that the administration's involved in, Lisa Cook, member of the Fed Board of Governors, fired by the White House. She's suing, says it was improper. You're a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Do you think that her firing is legal? And do you think the president should move, even with this court case going on, to name her replacement while that's going on?
The allegations against Lisa Cook are concerning. They're allegations of mortgage fraud, that whenever we have a government official that's alleged to have engaged in improper behavior, that reduces the trust of Americans in our elected leaders. That's concerning. Ultimately, the courts are going to make a decision as to whether or not this is valid for cause. But what I think is important is that I haven't heard her actually deny the allegations. And so if an individual is engaged in mortgage fraud in a position of public authority, that should be concerning. And I think the president has a role of making sure that we do remove people engaged in unethical behavior. Although the Federal Reserve should and is independent, it doesn't mean that the Federal Reserve is immune from criticism, critique, or actions to remove individuals that engage in unethical behavior. That's exactly why the clause that the president's allowed to remove an individual for cause is there in the law.
Do you think that this example, and then also the criticism of Fed Chair Jerome Powell, do you think that all of that has an impact in the confidence of an independent Federal Reserve, which, businesses, the financial system are all saying is a major, major piece of what makes America so valuable as an economy?
Again, the Federal Reserve is and should be independent. But again, that doesn't remove the Federal Reserve or allow them to be immune from criticism. We should be reviewing and analyzing what the Federal Reserve is doing. I've had Jay Powell before us in the Financial Services Committee, and he has received significant criticism. I was concerned that the Federal Reserve was far too late to recognize how significant the inflation was back when folks in the Biden administration were calling it temporary and transitory. It was nothing but that. And so I think it's important that we allow criticism, we allow free dialogue on the Federal Reserve, but it should also maintain its independent status. And I think it's just and appropriate that we're reviewing any actions of individuals in public authority if they do need to be removed for cause.
All right, Congressman Bryan Steil from Wisconsin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.